Ladies and gentlemen, friends, we are live. Welcome to the Voice of Reason podcast. I am so glad to be back joining all of you guys,
Yes.
watching alongside all of us. My name is Sean Phillips, and as always, I am joined alongside my two co-hosts, the one and only Mr. Andy Van Beber and the great and powerful Travis Kirkendall. And today we are joined by none other than Kaden Kiker. How are the three of you doing today?
I'm exhausted.
Mood.
I know, but I just got done telling everybody that got done with the track meet today. Hence why my voice is the way it is. Shout out to my track team; they did a great job. Travis and Sean remembers those days. One of these days, I am going to bring the photo out that I have of you guys. Little tiny Sean, little tiny Travis with no facial hair, and and Sean had the droopy lip going on to the extreme, to where it was just like almost touching his chin. So
was that the group photo you got? Of
yes,
all
yes,
Group
and it's
photo
I
where
have
I have
that photo.
it still hangs
I'm
in
shaved.
yes, it still hangs in my room. It's
I got it at my dad's.
yeah, I love that picture.
Great photo.
Well,
How were your guys' weekends?
Mine's been pretty good. My wife and I just saw the new Batman, and Sean's the one who originally said, like, dude, you got to see it. It's really good.
Yeah.
And I got to say, 10 out of 10.
Good.
I think my favorite part about it was they really showed like the Batman, the detective, not
Yeah.
just Batman beating the shit out of people. And I really loved that. And it was really edgy and dark, and Robert Pattinson killed it.
And before we get to Caden, Sean, you can't take up the whole show, but just give us a brief LA recap about what happened in LA. Next week we'll talk more about it. We'll give you more time, but just a brief recap before we get to talking to Caden.
sure. So, yes, as many of our listeners know, I was in Los Angeles. Was it last week or the week before? Week before last. It was awesome. I had a really good time. I got to meet some incredible people. I spent a couple days with Booker T, which was cool. Was actually like the first Booker T was the first person I ever saw in a professional wrestling match ever. And so to actually get to meet him and tell him that was super special for me. I spent a lot of time with an individual named David Marquez, who is a television broadcaster and producer, director, who's located in Los Angeles. I got to pick his brain a lot, learned an incredible amount in a short time that I was there. Again, the team that I was around and the people that I got to meet while I was in LA was awesome. The weather was great. I came back, it was cold as shit, and I'm already over it. I'm already over the cold ass weather. I miss seeing, the beach, and I got to see a bunch of cool things. The Harry Houdini house was kind of surreal. I saw a deli that Ringo Starr shops at every other day, goes there to get food. I got to see Gold's Gym on Venice Beach, where the very famous, Iron Paradise that Arnold, created, the Mecca. So, yeah, it was a really good experience. We'll deep dive into the details of that next week probably, but yeah, it was awesome.
Well, we would like to welcome Kaden Kiker. Caden, I guess we'll talk a little bit about, first of all, you serve in the Air Force, correct?
Yes.
And you serve on you were just telling us before we went on live here about how lovely, and the barking deer, which you have to look that up online, folks, but the barking deer of Guam, and the lovely, what is the temperature today, by the way, in Guam?
Too hot. I don't actually know. All I know is that I have my thermostat set on 70 degrees in my apartment,
Nice.
and I'm still sweating.
Oh, jeez.
How long have you been in the Air Force?
2 years now.
Okay, and what do you do for the Air Force?
I work on the budget side of finance. I essentially make sure, along with my other analysts, that we have all the things that the base needs. So basically they'll squadrons will put in funding docs that they need, like rucksacks or something, and we'll certify that they have the funds, send it over to contracting, and contracting will make the purchase or whatever, and then it'll come back to us and we'll be like, okay, you're good to go.
Awesome. We know, well, the boys, Sean and Travis, have connection with Caden's sister because they were in school together at the time. I had the pleasure of teaching Kate 1 year, and then you just decided to skip town and go somewhere else, which is fine. I get that. So, but no, and this is part 2 of our series, Transitioning in America. And we last week we wanted to thank Lauren Loggeman again for being on last week. Great show, a lot of great reviews from folks. And so, what we are about, and again, just to reiterate kind of what we said last week, the goal of Voice of Reason podcast has always been to be the whole spectrum. We show left, right, center, middle, wherever. And I have been following Kaden, not to sound creeperish, but you have, let's see, I think I follow you on the TikTok and on Snap, I think. But you have a lot of
Facebook
and maybe Facebook. You post anyway. But it came up in my mind about 2 months ago. I said, we need to have Kaden on, and we need to do this series because we've kind of, so, but we'll just dive right into it here. And so I've got some stuff in the guys, you jump in whenever you want to here. But Kaden, I think the first thing that a lot of our listeners kind of want to know, there are different terms that are out there to define people in the trans community. Transgender, gender nonconforming, genderqueer, non-binary. Why are there so many differences, and how do you identify?
So I identify as transgendered because I am transitioning from female into male. Gender nonconforming, non-binary, those are more for the people who don't really identify as male or female. Gender as well as sexuality is a spectrum. So people will call themselves what they feel most comfortable with and what they identify with. It's kind of yeah, that's pretty much it. Sorry.
No, that's fine. And so one of the things that I found out just in my own research, that there currently are 700,000 Americans who currently fit into one of these categories. In your own words, what does it mean to be transgender?
For me specifically, it means that I don't feel comfortable in my own body that I was born into. So the reason why is because I was not born into the correct body. So when I'm transitioning, I'm basically essentially making my outsides match my insides. And that's what I kind of put transgendered as. That doesn't mean that if you are transgendered and you decide not to do any surgeries or hormone therapy or anything, that you're not transgendered. It's just what I do to make myself comfortable in my own skin.
And there are a lot of, and let's go ahead and go through the negative part of this first. What misconceptions do you feel that there are about transgender women and men that kind of maybe agitate you the most, or what are the misconceptions that are really out there that you think are just the real big stickler ones?
That we're predators. Yeah, like
jeez.
Like I'm not. So yeah, there's like a huge, like we don't want trans people in the bathrooms with us because they could be sexual predators. That's not a thing. It really isn't. When I'm going into the bathroom, I really don't care what you're doing in there. I'm just in there to get in and get out. It's a bigger thing with trans women than trans men, from what I've seen, because of the stigma around them. But really, like we don't care. we don't care what you guys are doing in the bathroom. We don't want to watch you. It's gross as it is. So we're
Right.
just going to go in and do what we need to do. Another one is having to do with the trans community in sports. Saying that we have a biological advantage or a disadvantage isn't necessarily true. So for estrogen hormone therapy in trans women, actually it takes away some of that muscle mass and strength, which is why in the military, when we're doing PT tests, if you are trans and your gender marker has been changed, or you have your exception to policy signed by the commander, then you are held to the standard that you identify with. Because hormone therapy in and of itself is affecting your body in the way that it's making you more female or male. Testosterone actually helps me gain lean muscle mass, which helps me be stronger and faster than the average assigned female at birth person. We don't really have an advantage over anybody, especially because hormone therapy actually makes us immunodeficient. So we have to like uptake our vitamin C intake.
Do you? So we did have this discussion last week, and Travis, whenever you want to jump in on this too, one of the things that and I want to jump on that what you just talked about there, Kaden, was with God, I already forgot the name of the
Thomas
Mia Thomas, and so a lot of the criticism that went toward Mia Thomas was that this is the NCAA required 2 years of hormone therapy, and the criticism was, you still have bone density, you still have body frame, you still have lung capacity. Do you think that this is something that will? I mean, because let me back up. There was the bad thing about this is there's only 2 studies that are out there. Is it bothersome? Does it seem like to you that people are like trying to shove transgender into a corner and say, look, you do your thing over there? Because when Travis and I were researching for the show last week, we literally only found there's only been 2 research.
There's not much.
There's not anything. And to me, it was bothersome to me that I'm like, okay, for people who want to be educated on this and learn more, why isn't, and I know why do you think there's not more being researched and done about this?
So actually there used to be so much research on it. There used to be so many studies on it. What happened was that in, I think it was World War II, might have been also in World War I, but like the Nazi Party and a lot of other parties in that area, they burnt a lot of the research on transgendered people. Like, yes, that's actually a historical fact. Please feel free to fact check me.
Yes. Well, that was just the thing. We couldn't find anything. That was it.
Yeah. That explains it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So trans people have existed forever. The Native Americans used to call them Two-Spirit, and they were highly respected. There's so much out there. We're not new. Nothing about the LGBT community is new. We've existed forever. It's just that like majority groups have really tried to like contain us and push us into a corner.
Yes.
And any research that has been done on it has either been burned or destroyed or just negated in some way.
Do you think that?
Go ahead, Sean.
Well, my question was just going to be, do you think that the reason why it's such a newish concept to some people now just simply boils down to the advances in medical technology, whereas beforehand, gender reassignment surgery, if an individual was actually going to go through with gender reassignment surgery, could be very dangerous for that individual, especially if that's someone that was taking, was going through gender hormone therapy, just because that is so difficult on the body, like you've stated before. Is it just because we've had more advances in medical technology, is like that's why it's more common now, whereas now more than ever, the, to really physically, I should say physically change, as opposed to just, like you had said, transgender people that might not go through physical changes, but are, transgender themselves. Do you think that might be a reason why we're just seeing more of it today, is just advances in medicine and access to those different types of treatments?
That might be part of it. They are still doing more and more research on the types of surgeries that the trans community can get for gender reassignment. Currently, for trans men, there's only the 2 types of bottom surgery. And then for trans women, it's just the one. And they're kind of currently working on doing transplants instead of just those bottom surgeries, which is pretty neat in my opinion. And the more I've looked into it, the more I've seen like it's more recent research into these surgeries, but it's not like so new that it's happening last year. It started, I think the latest I saw was 2016. And it might even be farther back than that. But I do see your point. It could be because of the medical research that is going into it now.
So why don't you give us a little bit of a background as to what, to this point where you're at right now, what have you done as far as treatment? What does your regimen look like so far?
So currently, I've done mental health counseling, which is a requirement for transition in the military. I had to go to mental health and talk about gender dysmorphia, body dysmorphia, and basically tell them, hey, I don't feel right in my skin. Just here's all the things that I'm going through. Here's what I'm dealing with. And have them diagnose me with body dysmorphia. And what that is basically the diagnosis is what gets me to the transgendered healthcare team in San Antonio, Texas. And they kind of reaffirm the diagnosis, and then we start with like basically my treatment plan. So we make the medical treatment plan in San Antonio, and then I take it to my base, have my squadron commander sign off on it, and that's basically when it starts, and that's where I'm at now. I've had my treatment plan signed off by my commander. I've started hormone therapy. It's been about 7 weeks now. And I'm sending my exception to policies up to my squadron commander and my wing commander so that I can be held to the male standard of dress, PT, using male facilities, which is kind of what I need housing wise, because if they can't put me in the female dorms with a female roommate if I identify as male, because there's an issue there. But like it also could be dangerous to put me in the male dorms because I am assigned female at birth and I have a female body. So it kind of, they have to make sure that everything is copacetic essentially. So for both the medical treatment plan and the exceptions to policy, commanders have 30 days each to sign off on them. That is an actual regulation. So I'm just waiting for my exception to policy to come back.
And so, and another issue I want to, and Travis, whenever, I don't know if you had a question, Sean. I don't know if you had something you were going to ask, but did you?
I had one question. So you were talking about how like a lot of information was burned years ago and that kind of, and talking about the Native Americans and stuff like that. There's a lot of people who are really uneducated about this. They just go off of what they see on social media or whatever headline it is, right? Where do people go to find information on this? Like, where do you get your information? If you don't mind me asking.
So it's going to sound really dumb, but if you actually, there are certain content creators on TikTok, on Facebook, who speak specifically about this. And they can actually, they have better resources to actually, and more time to actually like go deep dive into historical texts and everything. That doesn't mean that I'm just like, oh, this is a thing that I found on TikTok. This has to be true. I do research it. I do like fact check TikTok because it's TikTok. There are certain things you shouldn't learn on there. But they are transgendered people. They are members in the community that are like, hey, this is stuff that I found that you should know about. And then from there, I will go in like on Google and I'll just type in keyword searches, and I'll find the actual documents, the actual research that has gone into it, which I find is awesome.
That's cool. That reminds me of cryptocurrency. There's like, if you want to learn about crypto, you gotta like follow some YouTuber or something that like did their research. That's what it reminds me of. So that's kind of cool.
So one other thing. So I want to go back to the critic side of this, Kaden. How do you respond to critics, which I know we're going to have some on this show, that in the text box, and we watch the text box and everything, and so we're kind of keeping the text to a minimum tonight. But how do you respond to critics who say that you are confused or you're misleading others? How do you respond to that?
Actually, I haven't really encountered that.
That's great.
Which I'm happy about. I'm basically, so the people in my life who know are people who follow me on social media, my family, and of course, like my squadron themselves. Like they were the first people I actually came out to after my sisters. And I was like, hey, this is a thing, by the way. And they've been pretty good about it. Discrimination there's a zero tolerance policy in the military for discrimination of any kind. So if I did encounter it, I would just go to equal opportunity, be like, hey, this is a situation going on, that would launch an investigation. For people who have experienced that criticism, who are having to deal with it now, basically all I got is, if they're gonna be up in your face, the best thing to do socially is to just ignore them, because as soon as you react, as soon as you give them that nugget of attention, they're going to keep going, and then it's going to look bad on you, and then it's just not going to be a good time for anybody except for this person who's giving you the negative of what you're doing. That's not to say don't defend yourself. Of course, if somebody is all right, train of thought. Just, there are high risks in the military being trans. Mostly for trans women, but for trans men as well, because there are those people who are going to be like, I'm going to show you that you're not this, or I'm going to show you that you actually are this, or this is how you want to act, this is how we're going to treat you. There's high levels of sexual assault, there's high levels of physical assault, just a lot of emotional and physical trauma that can go on with that. 100%, if you are in a situation that is dealing with that, sorry, I have a cat who wants attention by biting me. If you are in that situation, 100% stand up for yourself, fight back. Don't just be like, this is what's happening. Like, I usually have a weapon on me at all times. My dad actually got me several knives and a flashlight that doubles as a taser. So I carry at least one of those on me at all times. In uniform, when I'm out of uniform, going out in social situations, I have something on me, something in my car, so that if something does happen, I am prepared and I am safe. Just like err on the side of caution,
right,
in my opinion.
Right.
Like don't hide who you are, be upfront about it, but be safe at the same time.
I think, and maybe you can give me your feedback on, and my conception has been this, and the fellows can tell you, and you can tell me because you've been in my classroom too as well. As a evangelical Christian, there is this perception that everybody, we're closed, we're just, we're dumb, ignorant people, and it's what it has become is because people think that, okay, we have to have everything in our set box, and if something comes along and is outside of what we believe, then that person we have to condemn that person. We have to just, I think, and that perception, I think, even goes out into society, that if you don't fit into societal norms, that you have to shun that person or get, what really bothers me is that people don't look at people as people. You and I had this conversation. I forgot what day it was. We talked. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. But anyway, my perception has been this: I look at people as people. The fact that someone is gay, or the fact that someone's trans, or the fact that someone's fat, skinny, tall, short, whatever. I mean, I think. I mean, is that? Do you think that's where a lot of people's hang-ups is at? Is because people don't. If something doesn't fit into societal norms, then we're going to, okay, you're not fitting in my box, so you're weird, you're ignorant, or you're. I mean, is that? Do you think that's where the major problem lies at?
In some cases, yes. I do think that is the issue. Is we don't so gender. There are a lot of things that are actually a social construct, like gender. Gender is a social construct.
There was.
Um,
We actually had that. I want to come back to that, but go ahead. We're going to come back to that because we talked about that last week. Go ahead.
So there are a lot of people who are like, everything has a box, everything is black and white. But the thing is that nothing is black and white, even in nature. I had this conversation with my dad when I was home in December, because my dad is trying his best.
Mm-hmm.
He is a old-fashioned Texan Christian man. So he's trying his best to understand what's going on with me and what to do about it. So he was like, I just don't understand. It's not natural. And I had to bring up the fact that not only does homosexuality exist in nature, so it is transitioning. There are female lions who are putting on more, who are exhibiting more masculine behaviors in nature now. Like they're growing manes, they are mounting other females, like they're doing them and basically being trans lions. And I think it's great. Fish will change their gender, frogs do it on the regular. There's just so many different animals that exhibit transgender behavior, homosexual behavior that happens in nature. And it kind of wigged him out and he got mad at me. But yeah, it happens. Just because I don't fit into your box doesn't mean I'm not valid.
Right.
Doesn't mean I don't exist. And it does, and essentially it doesn't give anybody else the right to tell me what I can and cannot do with my body, who I am. So, yeah.
So Travis and I, I actually asked this question last week on our show last week, and you started out with it, and I'm glad you said that. So when somebody says gender is a social construct, okay, so if we go gender versus sex, why is there the difference there? How do you define each one in your terms?
Okay, so sex is the parts that somebody has. Gender is more how they present. So when you think of a baby shower and the parent is having a girl, generally it's pink everything, right? Like there's just those certain colors that we associate with a girl. It's the same with boys. But the thing is that gender being a social construct, 100 years ago, those colors would be flipped. Like gender is changing all the time, and that's because it's a social construct. So essentially, at one point, it was okay for men to go outside wearing skirts. That's Scotland. They can wear kilts all the time. That's just what they do. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, it's socially unacceptable for most men to go outside wearing any kind of frilly, flowery clothing that could be associated with female wear. And I think that's dumb. Clothes don't really have a gender because they're clothes. Mm-hmm. But it kind of just depends on culture, but it is gender. It's the social construct.
Okay.
Sometimes I talk in circles. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wait
that
for
actually, I'm glad you explained it, because I've kind of been trying to. I've heard that argument, and I was trying to figure out like how that was explained. So I'm glad you explained that for someone like me who's like, explaining an argument. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and because, and I want to readdress this too, is that even though somebody says, okay, I may not agree with. Do you have problems with someone who would say, I don't agree with your lifestyle, but you're still a valid person to me. You're still, I still value your friendship. I still value your, I mean, is that something that the trans community is wants, or is it an accept? I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you want acceptance more of the lifestyle, or do you want the acceptance of the person? Which one matters more to you, or are they both equal, or how do you see that?
I think it depends on the person. Um, to be honest, I with certain people, I would prefer to have the acceptance of my lifestyle and who I am as a person. Um, like with my family, I would like them to accept me and love me regardless. But like with perfect strangers, I don't care. I
Yeah,
really don't. You can accept me. You can tell me I'm going to hell. You could take a flying leap off a cliff. I have zero fucks to give. Sorry.
no, it's all right. Sean usually swears online all the time, so it's okay.
I do it too. You can swear some. It's fine.
Okay.
But and I think that's to me. And guys, I feel like I'm talking a lot again, so jump in sometime.
Of course.
I to me again because and I can see where your dad and my dad sound. My dad's 88 years old though, but my dad is of that old school, and just for somebody to say, the way that I am taught is okay. I look at a person, and we had this conversation the other day. When your sister was in high school, your sister had crazy hair, and she had all the stuff and everything, and she was just like, I don't agree with this dress code, and it was all, and she was, I don't know if she was trying to get a rise out of me or what, but I was just like, oh, okay, that's cool. And she's like, and she kind of shook her head and looked at me, and I was like, that's cool. If that's the way you feel, that's cool. I don't care. But I mean, is it? The thing that makes me the most mad is that people, and I know I'm talking in circles, but don't, it's that people say, I want you to fit in this, or I'm not going to accept you. And I think that's the ignorance in the whole thing, is that instead of us looking at someone saying, you're gay, you're straight, and like I said before, to me that's where the root of the problem lies, is that, people, I want people to look at me and they say, if they see a big guy, man, that guy's fat, I bet you he eats all the time, and I bet you he's just a slob and all this other stuff. And I don't want people to look at me like that and say, I want them to look at me and see me for who I am, for my intellect, my sense of humor, my that to me, that's just, I think that's the overreaching problem with society, that if you don't fit in this box, then we can't take you. We have to, it's almost like people who seem different than the societal norm have to prove themselves, which I think is totally wrong. So I don't know. That's my rant on that. But anyway,
I think some of it falls into like nowadays, and I mean I wouldn't even call it nowadays. I think this is just how the world has always worked. People kind of have to make other people's business their business when it never has to be their business. Like you just brought up like a point, what someone does, as long as it does not affect the people around you. It's the same argument that people always do, like when it comes to, the right to free speech. Like I should be able to say whatever the fuck I want because it doesn't affect the people around me. It's just words. It's until your words invoke action. Like if for our listeners, for the podcast that we talked about, the January 6th insurrection, where we talked about how, yeah, just saying, oh, take them by the balls, take them by the balls is fine to say. However, when an insurrection happens, and then there's that gray line of like, did you say that to start this, or what's the deal? So like, think of it like, if someone makes a lifestyle choice to smoke cigarettes by themselves, who gives a shit? Now, if they were smoking cigarettes and then blowing smoke into your child's face, that would be an issue, right? Where the thing is, someone that's transgender, it doesn't affect the person to their left or to their right. Now, obviously, like Kaden, as you stated, there's been you've had issues with your family and your and dealings with that. That's different than you murdering your father because you're transgender, right? Like there's a substantial difference between
Please,
the
we're not saying this.
Yes. So like that's where it always like gets me, where it's, if it's someone's lifestyle choice, like it's my choice to go and eat pizza. It doesn't hurt the person next to me. It might hurt the business down the road that I didn't order a burger from, right? But it doesn't hurt anybody. Okay, it's my decision and it affects me only. And you would not want people around you to judge you for that, like, oh, you're making these terrible lifestyle choices. Obviously you're going to have the people in your life that care about you always say, hey, maybe you should consider this or think about this. And that's just, hey, it is what it is. You care about me, you love me, so you're giving me your insight. Cool, but this is still my life. And I think that with transgender people, they unfortunately deal with a lot of, there's outside noise that comes in for a lifestyle choice that's theirs, that only affects them and people around them, especially people that they might, again, like you might never interact with, but if they saw you, recognize that you were transgender, but like, oh my fucking god, this person ruined my day by walking in front of me and me seeing them. And so that's the unfortunate misconception. And I was a manager at a gay nightclub, and so we had a ton of transgendered clientele that came in all the time, and oftentimes that's what they would say is like, I was going about my day, literally just walking to work, and and people barked at me and said things to me and said rude things to me. And just like you said earlier, transgender people, the amount of sexual and physical assaults that they go through compared to a cisgendered individual it's crazy how different the numbers are. And so clearly there's a huge problem with how transgendered people are, viewed and attacked in a society where their lifestyle choices don't affect the people around them. And that's why it's for me, like such a big deal, especially like, because I myself am not transgendered, but I've surrounded by people in my life that are transgendered. And so when I see the things that happen to them and what they've gone through, and especially like I've friends and coworkers in the military that are transgendered, and the steps now compared to how the steps were back then, like how long they had to wait during their military career before they could officially be comfortable. Like it was not that far long ago that you couldn't even openly be gay in the military. People seem to forget that quite a bit. And so I do think it's a good thing that we've taken a lot of strides in a very short span of time. When it goes back on the history of the military, in a very short span of time, we've taken a lot of really good strides. I think it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect, but at least there's those steps.
So, Kaden, in that, I just want to interject something real quick here, Sean. You talked about your battalion, your group, what and kind of how they've responded in specific. Can you give some examples? I mean, when you told some of the people within your group, how did they respond? What was the response within your military community? Give us a little bit more detail on that if you could.
So in my squadron, it was very much okay. We accept you for who you are. Overseas bases tend to be more tight-knit family groups within their squadrons because we are so far away from our actual families in most cases. Like I don't have anybody here with me except for my cats. It's just me. I have no family over here. There are some people who are able to bring their dependents over, but for the most part, we're all each other has. So it was very much a, we accept you as long as you get your job done, you're good type response. That's not to say that I didn't have to be like, hey, make sure this is something that you guys are keeping up with though. Because I came out in April last year to my squadron. I was like, all right, guys, this is the thing. I use he, him pronouns. Please don't refer, other than that, I don't care how you refer to me, just don't use female pronouns or honorifics or anything of the sort. But I still had people who were doing it like unconsciously. Some people were like, it's just instinctual, like we just do it out of habit. I'm like, I understand that. I do sound female, I do look female, I am held to female standards. Just be conscious of it. I did have an altercation with one of my senior NCOs because she had given me instructions, and I was like, okay, I got your instructions. By the way, you used female pronouns for me. That does hurt me because this is a thing that I am dealing with. Just be cognizant of it. And she did not react well because I am an A1C. I am an airman first class. I'm an E3, and she's higher up than me. So she had a conversation with me. She was like, please understand that in the system, you are female. So anybody using male pronouns for you, anybody using male honorifics for you, that is a courtesy. They don't have to do that, which is inaccurate because I went to EO and I was like, is this a thing? And they were like, no. As soon as you came out to them and told them that you are trans, they immediately transition from female to male is with pronouns and everything. It can be a learning period, but like it should have been like immediate, like, okay, we got this, we trying our best. It is not a courtesy for them to be using your preferred pronouns. You're supposed to do that, otherwise it's discrimination. I didn't open a case or anything, but I did talk to my NCO about it, and I was like, this is a thing that's happening that I need you to be sure that you are addressing and that you are keeping up with. And outside of that one confrontation that made me cry because I'm sensitive, that was the end of it. This NCO doesn't actually really address me by anything but my name now, which is fine. But yeah, it's like there was one negative experience that I had that wasn't like, it didn't have to be. She got upset with me because I corrected her, and then I got upset because she told me the truth, but the truth was skewed, and it upset me. So it didn't have to be negative. It didn't have to be that. But that's essentially what it is. But like my squadron, everybody, like my flight commander, not my squadron commander, my flight commander will actively go out of his way to go talk to people who have misgendered me on accident or on purpose. Like he'll just be like, hey, just focus on this. Make sure that you are addressing him the correct way. And that actually makes me feel a lot better because that is, he's my family standing up for me, and that I just appreciate it a lot.
Kaden, for you, one of the big things, especially now in Florida with all the legislation that's being passed there, and one of the topic of conversation is when to talk to young public school students about sex and going over things like sex and gender. So in our household, I have a 3-year-old daughter. From when she could speak, from when she was able to talk, at least in our household, we've always been big on using the correct terminology so that there's no potential for any kind of misconception. Like if there's an issue with her vagina, we want her to know the proper term. And so for you, when did, and if you're not comfortable sharing, it's fine. When did you start to realize like, hey, I don't feel like at what age did you go, hey, I'm clearly a boy. I on the outside, I don't look like a boy. When did those changes start for you? Because I think a lot of people, like the arguments always now is like, when is, too early to start hormone treatments? And is it, safe to start hormone treatments for a child that might be 5 or 6 that says, hey, I don't feel like a boy, I'm a girl. What for you, what was that process like? And then if it was super early on in life, what was it like in that in-between time where you weren't allowed to make those changes?
So growing up, my mom didn't really focus too much on gender. She would get us, like, she'd get us dolls, but she'd also get us race cars. Like, she'd get us the, like, stereotypical boy and girl toys. She wanted us to be balanced. It wasn't, so I didn't really think about anything about gender when I was super little. That's not to say that there aren't transgendered people who don't know this. I actually follow a TikToker on, I follow a creator on TikTok who knew that she was trans when she was 4 years old. Like, her mom asked her, "What's your name?" And she said Rose. And she's like, "Oh, are you a girl?" And yes, I'm a girl. Like, there are transgender people who do realize this, like, at super young ages. I didn't really start thinking about it and being like cognizant of being in the wrong body until I was 11, and things started to develop. And I was like, this is not supposed to be happening. This is not how I'm supposed to look or sound. I'm not supposed to have these functions that's going on. Of course, being an 11-year-old who trusts their mother implicably, I was like, "Mom, like, what?" Like, it wasn't even "I am," it was "what if." I brought it up in like a hypothetical situation, and she flipped biscuits. Like, we had to buy a new roof. It was that bad. And I never brought it up to her again. There was a period of time where I was so scared of it that I forced myself to be overly feminine. Like, I was wearing skirts every day. I like had my makeup done, like long hair. I had to be a girl. And I've actually had this conversation with my older sisters because they were like, "Why didn't you say anything to us about it? Like, why didn't you even bring it up?" And I was like, "Because I didn't know it was safe." Our growing up situation, our living environment wasn't always the safest, most stable place to be different or just to be. And I didn't know if I said anything to my sisters, if they would take it to my mom, and then my mom would have her reaction that she had done when I was 11. So I bottled it up and I squished it down, and I kind of just was like, I have to be a girl. I have to be a girl. There's no other option. It wasn't until October of the year that my mom passed away that I actually started to explore. And to like, I started referring to myself as he, him, like just in my head, just by myself. Just using male pronouns, dressing more masculine, just trying to exist that way.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 20. No, hold on. It was 2020, so I was 19.
Okay.
And I had basically just been like, "Yep, this is more comfortable for me." And I talked to my sisters about it. And I was like, I've been doing this by myself, and I kind of just wanted to let you guys know. And I told them about it, and they're like, "We love you regardless. Like, we are the most alt group of people you have ever met. I don't understand why you're scared to tell us this or why you're crying right now." And I'm just like, "Well, you guys are my sisters." And like, it was like a whole ordeal. And then for a while, it was just me and them who knew. And then my squadron, I told my squadron, and then it branched out slowly from my family. So like, I don't think, like, from that experience, that there is a age where it's appropriate to, or where it's inappropriate to talk about these things with your kids. I feel like immediately, as soon as they're able to talk, they should know like the correct terminology for things. What the actual word is, because using like cutesy names for that opens them up to a lot of danger, essentially.
Big time. That's
So,
why
like,
we decided to, we never wanted there to be any kind of like red flag to where it's like, if something happened to her, or if she was experiencing something, she could tell literally anybody and they'd understand exactly what she was talking about.
So like, having that open line of communication with your children, I feel like, is very, very important. Because if your kids are scared to tell you something, they're going to go online, and that opens them up to something even more dangerous. Because if they can't talk to you about it, then if they talk to a stranger about it, that stranger could be giving them the wrong information, could just be a predator, and just being like, "Oh, hey, like, let me see," like that kind of thing. I'm like, that's not okay. With hormone therapy and puberty blockers, that really should be something that you talk about with your kids, especially if they do feel like they should be a certain way. starting off slow when they're younger and being like, okay, so you want to be a boy, that's cool. If you feel like you're a boy, we can start doing that. We can do clothing, we could do name changes, like just something like that. And then with puberty blockers and hormone therapy, should really start at puberty, when hormones are starting to come in, so that you can like definitely talk to doctors and go to mental health professionals just to like talk about these things and make sure you're getting it out there and like understanding what's going on. Because there are some cases where you think you're one way, but you're really just another. And that can be even more traumatic in a way. Because if you, like, for example, if I weren't actually trans, if I were like just a lesbian or something, and I thought I was trans because of how I felt, then that could be a whole another can of worms that I would have to deal with, especially if I had already started like further along in my transition where I had bottom surgery and I had different parts now. Like that's a whole other thing. Having open lines of communication with your children not only keeps them safe, it gives you peace of mind, and it can give them like the tools that they need to identify how they are, how they feel, and can give them the choice and the chance to actually exist in a body that they're comfortable with.
I think that the main struggle with a lot of people in this conversation, again, is I'm coming from my background. I think that when you really have to look at relationship and you're bringing up a lot of things here that focus on relationship, because if your child, and me personally, so if something like this would happen to me, would I deal with it difficultly? The difficulty level for me would be hard. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, I wish to maintain relationship with my children. Relationship to me is more important than anything else. And I liked how you said earlier, dad's dealing with it, and how do you feel? I mean, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit, what do you think is the most difficult thing for your dad to deal with? I mean, that you've noticed this far?
So definitely, in my opinion, the religious aspect of it. So when I told him over the phone, like a week before I was coming home, I was like, Dad, I'm terrified right now. And he's like, what are you scared of? I'm like, I have something to tell you, and I'm scared that like after I tell you, you're not gonna want to talk to me anymore. You're not gonna want to see me ever again. And during this, I was in a puddle of tears. An emotionally equipped man. He does not know how to deal with crying, and I think it's a little bit funny because he's like, he got mad at me for crying. He's like, hold on a second, what are you talking about? And it like he took a little bit to try and like figure out what I was talking about, and then he's like the first sentence out of his mouth was, well, God doesn't make mistakes. And I'm like, we're not going to bring God into this right now. Because I was like, I'm not going to bring God into this. I don't follow Christianity. I don't practice it. I practice witchcraft with an entirely different set of deities and that kind of work. That's not to say that I don't know anything about Christianity. He got me a Bible for a tech school graduation present. So I have the Navy Bible, the wrong branch.
Well, there you
go. He tried.
But yeah, he tried. But I have it. I know facts about it. I know enough about the Bible to be like, okay, well, we're not going to talk about this right now because sometimes the Bible is open for interpretation. Sometimes it's black and white. I was like, we're not going to bring that up. He's like, okay, I understand. And then like, he was like, well, you were supposed to be a boy anyway. Second thought out of his head. And I was like, yeah, you and Mom told me that. You told me that you guys didn't know what I was going to be when I was born because you couldn't see anything. Like I wouldn't I wouldn't show. I wasn't presenting anything at the time in utero. So they had planned out boy names for me, and then I came out and I was assigned female at birth, and he was like, okay. So that was his second sentence was, you were supposed to be a boy anyway. And then we kind of like talked about random stuff, and I calmed down. I was like, okay, well, I'll see you when I come home. And then when I came home, we had a more in-depth conversation because he's so confused. He does not understand. He's like, I don't know what this means. I don't know how you feel this way. Give me 1 second. My phone is dying. He's like, I don't understand what this means. You're gonna have to like help me out with some things. And I'm like, okay, well, we can have that conversation. And we did with my stepmom, and we kind of just existed. And then I took a nap because I was super tired. I don't think he still gets it sometimes. He still uses female pronouns. He still uses my dead name, which I expected because my dad, and change takes him a while. But after that conversation with my dad, and we got off the phone, he immediately called Jessa to try and yell at her. Jessa is my second eldest sister. But yeah, he immediately tried to yell at her, and she was like, no. He was kind of hurt, actually, is what Jessa got from it, because he was the last to know out of like my main family. And that's because I was terrified to tell him. He's my only surviving parent, and I did not want to lose my relationship with him because I didn't really have one when I was younger, because he was always gone. He was in the military. And then after that, the divorce happened, and a whole other can of worms. So building that relationship with him that I have now was hard. It was a struggle, and it was a hard one. And I didn't want to lose it, and that's why I didn't tell him. But Jessa kind of talked him through it. Jessa is a LGBTQ certified counselor. She works with youth in need to help them with these things. She's also a trauma counselor. She's basically my rock in most things, because I'll be like, Jessa, this is the thing that I'm dealing with, and she's voice of reason, very much so. But he again tried to bring up that God does not make mistakes, which is again the wrong thing to say to Jessa, because she also practices witchcraft. But she was like, yeah, Christian God does not make mistakes. He teaches lessons. And that kind of closed the book on that one. That was my favorite line that she'd ever said, was that God does not make mistakes. He teaches lessons. But yeah, and I totally forgot what we were talking about.
No, that's fine. And I have one more question. If the guys want to finish up, we're getting close to our time here. But in this whole thing, I've heard a little bit the term journey tied to this process. Would you use this in your own case, and why would you use that?
Would I use journey for my case?
Do you feel this is an ongoing thing, or do you feel I mean, it sounds kind of like a weird question, but when somebody says, "Okay, this is my journey," or "This is my," how do you view this now? I mean, this is who you said. This is who you are. Just, I mean, is it a process, or do you see it? What is your hope for one day? I mean, what is your goal ultimately?
All right, so my goal, is to be comfortable in my skin. So as I said, I was diagnosed with body dysmorphia, which the military takes very seriously, because there have been a lot of suicides around body dysmorphia and that kind of thing. So it's treated as a medically necessary treatment plan, what I'm going through right now. So with it being medically necessary, they take care of my surgeries, my hormone therapy. There's only one surgery that they don't take care of, and that's because it's technically a cosmetic surgery. And that's the final bottom surgery. Next year, next March, I have a double mastectomy planned, and then that May I have a hysterectomy planned. which will be covered by the military. But I don't really, in my opinion, Journey doesn't really fit what I'm doing. It's me. Essentially, assembly would be the best adjective for this. I am assembling my body and making sure that it fits how I feel. And that's kind of just what I'm dealing with. It's an adventure for sure because hormone therapy is doing a lot of interesting things. I was cleaning my face the other day and I found tiny little mustache hairs. And of course I got really excited about it and I did a little happy dance. I texted everybody. I'm like, guys, I have a mustache. It's really small, but it's there. And of course, like my voice is changing, like everything is changing. And I am enjoying the process, but it's not really, it's more of an adventure and a process than a journey to me.
I gotta ask, are you gonna rock the military stash? I had one myself, and my senior leaders hated it.
So I don't want facial hair. Like,
okay.
The excitement was mainly because I'm able to grow it now, but it's not because I want one. So I do plan on like shaving.
Gotcha.
But like it was more about the existence of it that made me happy about it. I don't plan on growing a mustache.
It's not all what it's cut out to be. It's all right. It's I tried it for a while myself, and I was just like, yeah, it's okay. We're still waiting for Sean to grow his first mustache, so it's okay.
Hey, no, if it wasn't for the Monday through Friday Army job, there would be a luscious, beautiful beard on this face.
Then I'll let you grow a stash.
I could grow a stash, but that's no. I have to recruit. All right, so me with a mustache, you don't recruit anybody. You get kicked out of schools and not allowed back into schools when you have this face and a mustache.
That's because you do look like a child predator, Sean, when you have a mustache. So
yeah, you are not wrong. It's the reverse Hitler that I get because there's no hair that grows right here, and then it's just the whiskers out top. So, well, Kaden, you actually had answered my closing questions that I had on just kind of like what's next for you and what you've got coming on. So I'm excited for you. It was great to get to meet you officially and get the chance to speak with you and kind of, I really do think that at least for a big chunk of our listeners and kind of where they're from, one of the big misconceptions is they don't hear it from the horse's mouth directly. I mean, it is what you see on TV, what you see from movies, what you see from shows, what you hear Tucker Carlson fucking rant about, on Fox. So
let's bring up the weird. Let's bring up a weirdo. There you go, Tucker Carlson. Yeah.
And so for it's not like it's something that's going to change overnight, but at least for some, to actually hear from an individual that's going through it and what it was like, and, for them to hear, oh, wow, this, there was a lot of things that happened in this person's life, and it was maybe earlier in their life than I would have thought, so I'm really glad that you're able to speak about it, because there's so many people that just aren't able to talk about it and aren't comfortable enough. And so I'm glad. It sounds like, even though the best thing that I've heard from you so far that really makes me happy is the support that you're getting from your team and the people around your squad. That is huge, just because Travis and I can both speak for it. The backbone of how you perform and how you feel your day to day are the people around you and your squad and your platoon, and so it really is good to hear that you have that support where you're at now, and I hope that you continue to have that support wherever it is that you go. Hopefully, when you figure out where your next duty station is, it'll probably be a fucking week before you have to go. Don't you love it? But at least with you, your Air Force, the chair will always be comfortable, so you never have to worry about anything.
There it is. There it is.
I can't even be mad because I do work a desk job.
There it is.
No, so well, to our listeners, especially if any of you guys that are listening and commenting, I know we didn't get to any of them tonight. But if any of you do have any specific questions for Kaden, please feel free to message us directly, the Voice of Reason podcast Facebook page, and we can relay any questions that we deem reasonable. Some of you guys and gals to Kaden, and then if when he has time, if he feels like giving you us the time of day again to answer some of those questions, we definitely appreciate it. Because I know for some there might be some that they weren't comfortable feeling to ask live. But anything that we can do to kind of continue to educate the people that listen to our show, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you coming on tonight. For those that are listening at home, make sure you guys check us out. We are everywhere. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean. The list continues to go on and on. I keep telling myself I'm going to type out the list that has everything that you can find us on. We're on Twitch TV. Last week we had over 20 viewers at one point. It was only like our third time being live on Twitch, so that's freaking awesome. That will continue to grow. Make sure you check us out when we're live on YouTube, live on Facebook. So please, again, check us out. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter, the Voice of Reason Podcast 2021. Thank you all so much for giving us a listen. Gents, is there anything you'd like to add before we sign out this evening?
Kaden, it was great seeing you again. Thank you for coming on with us tonight. We really do appreciate your time, even though it is, oh, geez, I don't even.
1 in the afternoon now?
Is it 1 we got 1 in the afternoon, 1:30? Was that about what time we're at?
Yeah, it's 1:34.
Oh, there you go. Well, yeah. But yes, and thank you for scheduling with us, and we really do appreciate your time with us tonight.
Yeah,
thank you for
so
having
much.
me on.
Yeah, it was awesome. This I didn't talk much, but this is by far one of my favorite episodes we've done. It was cool getting to hear your story. I learned a lot. It's given me a different perspective on the topic, and this is why I love doing this podcast, having these conversations. This was by far one of my favorite episodes we've done. So thank you again for your time. I think the listeners are going to like it.
Yep.
All right. That is all from us here at the Voice of Reason podcast. We can't wait to talk to you guys next week. Until then, be a friend, tell a friend, make sure to give us a like, share, and subscribe. And we will talk to you guys next week.